This tutorial, we're going to quickly learn how to build a table view programmatically using Swift. So I've started a new project. Click Next. We'll create it. Within our view controller, we want to create a new variable. We'll call it let table view equals a UI table view. Let's see if I can type. We're going to initialize it with a frame. We'll just call it self.view.bound. So we want it to take up the whole thing. We'll make a UI table view style dot plain. Alright, and it's just going to tell us, hey, you don't need to do that, but we're going to use table view next. So we'll do a table view dot delegate equals self, and a table view dot data source equals self. Now we haven't seen table or delegate and data source before, but data source is what's going to tell us or describe the content of what's going to be in the table. And the delegate is what is happening when a table view cell is touched or things like that. It's basically the view telling us some information back so that the view controller can respond to it. So the next thing we need to do is do a self.view.add subview table view. You can see we have a couple of errors. So the next thing we need to do is we need to tell our view controller that we need to implement some methods in order to have that data source and delegate able to work. So now you can see an error up here that says the view controller doesn't conform to the protocol UI table view data source. So there are some required methods. If we can command click, we can see a required method of the data source in describing the data is the number of rows. So we need to make sure that we implement that. And on the delegate side, there is some display customization that we can put in. But let's go back to the data source again. So number of rows and self for row at index path, those are our two data source functions that are required and we have to put in there. So let's put them in there. So I'm just going to start typing number. And you can see table view number of rows before, and then I'm not going to complete that, and then we're going to do another one, table view self for row at index path. Now what I'm going to do so that we can display some information is I'm going to come up here and create a items array. So items is going to be an array. We're going to type it as a string array. That's going to be equal to an array of strings. We'll just say blue, green, and yellow. So we've got 3 different strings there. And now we can come down here and in our number of rows, we can just say items.count. We need to return that. As we can see here, what's being returned is an int. It's what's expected to come back. And so that data source is expecting an int so that we know how many to put in there. We need to do one more thing up here in our initialization of the table view. We need to specify a type of cell. So we need to do a table view dot register class. We're just going to use a normal UI table view cell dot self, and then let's get rid of that. And we're going to tell it our reuse identifier so we don't bottle up a bunch of memory. We're going to try and reuse the cells, just change some things on each cell. We're going to come down here now and we're going to get a variable cell, which we're going to create. We're going to say TableView.dequeue reusable cell. So it's going to try and get us a cell named with a identifier of cell. If it doesn't have one, because of this register class method, it's going to create one and then give it to us. So now all we have to do is do a cell.textLabel.text equals, I think it's just items at indexPath.row. And then we're just going to return our cell. And build and run that. And it's going to say, hey, is this optional or is this not optional? Well, we actually need to specify that this is as UI TableView cell. And that it's not optional, it has to be a TableView cell. This needs to switch, there we go. So the text label is optional, but the cell is not. Now we can build and run that. We should see a table view come up with our blue, green, and yellow. The cool thing about table view, it's got this nice scroll view already built into it. But you can see that we didn't do anything as far as tapping on these things. So let's add one more function. We'll call it didSelect. You can see that the table view delegate actually implements this. So table view delegate, we can see will display height estimated. And then there's this didSelect row at index path. Well, the first thing we're going to do is tell the table view .deselect row at index path and true. And what that's going to do is when you click on it, the color is going to go away. The other thing we're going to do is do a nslog, and we're just going to do a here something to tell us that we've hit that point. We could do an nslog, we could do a print, they both work. So now when I click on it, you can see it printed out in the console, but you can also see that it gives us a nice animating away. So that's how we create a table view. We add in our delegate and data source, all using Swift.